Hello, my beautiful friend, and welcome back to another episode here on my Challenge Your Norm podcast, where you are catching me in Denmark, my home country, my hometown. Aarhus is where I am at. I'm sitting in the living room of my mom's house. And since coming back to Denmark, I have not been able to stop thinking about wanting to share certain advice with you when it comes to how to stay in alignment with your goals, with what you deep down want during the holiday season. But I already recorded a podcast on this topic about how you could stay in alignment, true to yourself during the holiday season. But about a week ago, I had a conversation with my community, my challenger community. Every single month I run these challenges, and every week we have conversations. And these individuals who are in these challenges, they are just such wise, beautiful humans. And last week, when we set ourselves up for success for this holiday season, spending time with family and just being social during a time in a season of life where you have set yourself certain goals, or maybe you just consistently want to make eating choices that are in alignment with how you want to feel, who you want to become as a human, who you want to be as a human. And these beautiful individuals shared such awesome advice. Like, I really needed to hear a lot of these things that they shared. And because I had already created a holiday season episode, I thought I shouldn't share it. But you know what? I think that it's better to make 2 episodes on this topic, because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. It's challenging when you're someone who is starting to take care of your body in a new way, and the people around you maybe are not in that same season of their life, or they just don't understand. And how do you navigate that? How do you communicate it, or still do the thing that you deep down want to do without hurting anyone's feeling, or without getting those negative responses? Like, how do you navigate with this? Also, just when you're by yourself, like, how do you continuously stay true to how you want to show up for yourself in your life? So today, that's what we're doing. I want to share a couple of moments from our conversation that I'm hoping you will find useful as well. And hopefully take something with you as you are about to maybe travel to spend time with your family, or just have different dinners and days with people who you love and care about. And maybe even some tools and tips that you can use for when you're by yourself, or just your day-to-day life, as to how you can start making better choices that you know are going to help you long term. If you hear background noise, it's because my mom is packing up some presents for Christmas, getting ready, preparing. So without further ado, let's dive in. And if you're wanting to become a part of this community, you can sign up for my January challenge now in the description below, or any upcoming challenges. We run this year round. This is a lifestyle. It's not a 30-day challenge and then you're healed for life. No, we continuously learn, we continuously grow, and want to just develop the habits, stay consistent with the habits that make us feel fulfilled and happy and healthy and good long term. So if you want to join us, sign up. And I'm so excited to hang out with you throughout January and hopefully onward. But without further ado, let's dive in.
Hi, my name is Pernilla, and this is my Challenge Your Norm podcast. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything related to personal development. And well, to grow, we got to challenge our norm. And so on this podcast, we chat about life and how we can challenge our normal way of living it to make it greater than we could have ever imagined. Just one little belief, habit, bold move, and challenge at a time.
I think for me, like, the biggest challenge with, like, especially holidays is just, like, yes, staying clear with that, but, like, trying to be very, like, mentally aware of all of that at the same time, when it's, like, family has, like, all these, like, not so great food options, or, like, they just want you to, like, do certain things and, like, be with them most of the day, and it's, like, trying to be, like, very aware of, like, making sure I get the workout in, making sure I'm drinking water, making sure, like, maybe I eat, like, a protein meal before going over there, just so I'm not, like, tempted by stuff more, even though, like, they're like, "No, no, you should have it, you should have it." I'm just trying to, like, stay very clear on the goals, but also very aware of the goals at the same time, so that, like, even when, like, I wanna fray a little bit, it'd be like, "No, like, I have these goals for this reason," and, like, trying to keep them, like, front of mind, like, all the time, almost, like, in an obsessive way, to make sure I'm sticking to them.
And I want to just share that there's also sometimes beauty to having a week, maybe that being Christmas, where you try the opposite, where you maybe, yes, are still aware. I'm just like, this may not be what you need to do. You may need to do the complete opposite. I'm just sharing like a different perspective. What would happen if you like
yes, had your protein drink before so that you're not like craving, but like you had a little bit more than maybe normally you would allow yourself to. That could be a way as well. And feeling how does that feel? And then how do I feel when I come back? Like, do I feel an increase in strength? Just a completely different perspective. And I like to bring that up to you specifically because you're someone who's so good at being disciplined. That may not be what's gonna make you the happiest. Only you know that. I've had both. Like sometimes I want to get back on it. Sometimes I want to allow myself a little bit more of a, whatever that is. If you had to like dream scenario, how would you feel at your best throughout this holiday with all of that?
I think part of it is knowing like some of like the foods like families have and stuff is like, yeah, it's tasty, but it doesn't make you feel very good afterwards. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the big reminder. It's like, yeah, I can eat that and like have like a little bit of grace for myself and like have like a bite or two. But I also know like if I have a bite or two, that's fine. Like I don't care about that. But it's like I don't need to have like a ton of it on my plate or like a whole serving because like I'm not gonna feel good after it. So it's like I don't need to have like the big like crispy roll everybody likes to have at Christmas or like the big desserts everybody likes to have. It's like, yeah, I can like always still a couple bites from Mike or like have like a tiny little piece or even just not finish a piece and have a couple bites. But I also know like afterwards, it's like everyone likes to like, oh, I have like a food coma. It's like I don't want to have like the food coma reaction where it's like I feel like so groggy and just so like bloated and gross from eating the stuff that like doesn't make you feel good. I think there's a good balance of knowing like, yep, I want to have a bite of like Mike's or like just have a really, really small portion of it just to have like a little bit and like try it or whatever. But I think like I've gotten past the point of like where I used to feel like very obligated to try things that family has, like or like, oh, so and so made this for this occasion, like you should have some. And I used to feel really obligated to like, oh, I should try it because like they made it and like whatever. But I've gotten really good at being like, like already just saying, oh, I'm so full already, I just don't have any room left, and like almost lying about it a little bit to be like, I don't want to eat it in like the most polite way.
I feel like you've gotten so good at that.
I've gotten really good about like saying no in the like the most polite way versus being like I can't eat that. It's like instead of saying I can't, it's like I know mentally and physically like I don't want to eat the things like that don't make me feel good. So I've gotten really good this year about kind of like going around it and just kind of like spinning it to like let people who aren't on like this kind of journey or whatever, like who don't understand it, kind of like not feeding into their issue, but just kind of like saying the thing that's going to make them like not question it enough, because then it becomes like this bigger deal where it's like I don't like they don't care enough to hear about like the goal and the journey. So it's like if I just say I'm really full, like I just don't have any room left, like it's really quick and simple and nobody says anything.
Hazel, I totally know what you mean. And I think this is also us really getting better at it. Like, this is part of the journey, like moving from stuffing everything into your face and, like always people pleasing. And especially during the holidays, that's such a good challenge to take, right? And I feel that the only thing that really works all the time is when you say, I can't have this because it will make me feel shit. If you say, the only thing people don't question is your feelings. So because that's something that only you can experience, right? So if you say like, and they're like, oh, please have that chocolate cake and whatnot, and you're like, I want to, but honestly, my stomach isn't feeling very well, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, no worries, or you're like, oh no, I know that it's not gonna fit right with me, I just have a tiny bit. Is that cool? And then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, sure, no worries. I feel that that is always a really good trick, because otherwise, like you have to reason and you have to be like, oh, I'm on this challenge. Challenge is also a really good excuse, by the way. If people are really consistent, like persistent, you just go and you're like, hey, I'm on this challenge. I'm doing this and that. It's super cool. Would you be able to help me? Like, do you want to help me? So, and then it kind of puts people in your boat. That's another strategy that worked for me. But honestly, like whenever it comes down to feelings, that's something no one can question, which is so nice. Try it.
It has happened to me that I see people in January and they're like, "Oh, come here, have a drink," and I'm like, "I cannot. I'm doing no drink January," and they're like, "Okay, fine," and then they see me again in February and I'm like, "Hey, have a drink," and I'm like, "I cannot." I'm doing no drink February. And I'm like, okay. I just keep repeating that over and over every time they see me. And then at some point they get the message.
There's something about that because then people don't question it. It's the same if you're like, I'm not eating sugar for these 30 days. I'm trying not eating sugar for these 30 days or like whatever it is. It's like people respect that in a different way because they're like, oh, that's like when it's a challenge, it's almost like acceptable in a different way, which is funny, but it resonates better.
If you add, can you help me? It puts that person into your boat. So that's like another thing I think that is super powerful because before it's about you and then all of a sudden you ask them to kind of like, make you succeed in that challenge and help you out, right? And all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, of course I'm not going to give her sugar. Are you kidding me? I'm going to help her.
Because people always want to help you. It's when you build like almost against each other, like instead of you being against them for like, I'm not having your cake, it's more so let's be a team and help each other in this.
Another thing is like some of these things, it's not like you're making it up. Some of those are real things that you feel in your stomach, that you feel in your body, in your organism. I used to oftentimes I get like bloated and I tend to have like a sensitive stomach. And then I went to Aruba on vacation. And then like every day for one reason or another, like I was having like fish, tortillas, and vegetables only. And I was feeling so good. And I was not bloated and I was not constipated. I lost like 2 pounds in 1 week. And I was just naturally eating my fish and my tortillas and my veggies because I wasn't eating some of the other stuff that probably upsets my stomach. So I think it's pretty real how that can really change how you feel and your body.
Just with kind of the mental process around thinking about how different foods make you feel. I think what's really interesting about what Miguel said was that like after like several days or a week of eating in that way, he noticed that he was feeling better. And I was going to say, actually, I had the same experience in that like if I had like a couple pieces of chocolate, I wouldn't necessarily feel worse after. But if I do that every day, like even if it's just a small amount of foods that are not like the best for me, it catches up with you. You start feeling more sluggish, more tired, like your energy levels are changing. And it's such a small thing, like a couple pieces of chocolate or like, someone buying you like a vanilla latte instead of a regular latte. And unless you're really paying attention to the patterns, you may not realize how much worse it's making you feel. And so what I notice is like when I have fully cut out refined sugar, fully cut out refined carbohydrates, I truly feel better. Like every day, I have more energy. My mood is like just like cool as a cucumber. And like I feel so much better just day in and day out. And it's a very small change. Like many would argue a couple pieces of chocolate would not make a difference, but it truly does when I like look through the patterns. And so even if you don't feel necessarily worse after eating some like added sugar or something like that, maybe like trending that and journaling each day, like how do I feel today? And then maybe doing a few weeks without those types of foods and seeing how you feel. And I think that's what proved to myself that I just truly do not want those foods in my diet. Like for many years, I did not have sugar and I had a really very much a whole foods diet for like most of my life. And then like in recent years, I've been like loosening up and I thought I was being more flexible or like being more moderate, but the truth is that it made me feel worse. And so going back to kind of that whole foods diet has been, yeah, like I just feel like more like myself, more energetic. My workouts are going great. Like my running is going great. And it's truly, I think, from stemming from that. And so I think being able to like know yourself that you feel better when you eat a certain way and proving it to yourself helps in those moments, let's say in the holidays when someone's like, oh, do you want some of these like really nice chocolates, these like, expensive chocolates that I bought? Yeah, it may look good, it may taste good, and I may not even feel that much worse after having one or two. But the pattern is that I feel way better when it's completely cut from my diet.
I have a question for you because I think many people may come to that awareness, but what do you feel? Because then they can be aware of it, but still not want to change it because it's really hard to change patterns. What made you make that switch and actually like, okay, commit?
I think about it as rewiring your brain and rewiring your palate in that every day that you don't have refined sugar and added sugars, like more days you have in a row that you don't have that, the more that your palate adapts and you're rewiring your brain to reach for things that truly make you feel better. And so the reason why I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to not having this. And I know that it's going to be hard because I started getting used to having those things in my diet. But every day that I go without it, it's like I'm rewiring my brain and it's just making it easier and easier and easier to make decisions that are more aligned with myself as I move along. So, for example, like I remember when I only ate whole foods, carrots and apples were so sweet and I really looked forward to eating them. Like they were like I didn't even need to have carrots and hummus. I would just like really enjoy eating carrots because they taste sweet and like it's a crunchy, refreshing snack. And like people used to ask me, like, oh, what's your favorite food? And I would always say apples. I think just remembering that like those foods bring me a lot of joy and I really enjoy them when your palate is like trained for whole foods. Like if you're used to eating like the taste of very sweet milk chocolate, yeah, a carrot's not going to taste that good in comparison. You're going to want to eat it with like hummus or like something else. And so I think like when I'm facing resistance, like, oh, I want to have this thing, I just think about how the more days in a row that I go without having that, the faster I'll get to rewiring my palate and the faster I'll get to rewiring my brain, such that those kinds of options like don't appeal to me at all. Like I went many, many years where people would have foods out and I almost didn't see them because I just so truly didn't want them. And so I know that that's where I will get again the more days that I stick with this goal.
I love that you're saying that, Emily, because I think that's exactly what I have experienced too. That if I try to do something, but it's like on and off, and some days yes, some days no, it's hard to make progress because it's so like not consistent. Versus if I'm like, okay, I commit to eating whole foods, and I do that for the day and for the week and for the month, then I really see like a big change, and then I really feel like motivation because I know how good it feels and I can see it and feel it.
Totally. And I think like the journaling is so key. Like I know I said this in the last like two calls even, but like in order to make change, I think you have to journal. Like you have to sorry, you had to have a reflective practice and for me that would be journaling and that like to see these patterns is the I think you have to prove to yourself that that's actually what you want. And so, like, the only way to find out if you actually want that is to reflect. And for many of us, that's journaling. So, I'm very, Pranilla, I am so excited for this January journaling challenge.
I wanted to follow up actually what Emily and Miguel said and ask more of a question because now I had this phase where I've been off like refined sugar for a month and I had the feeling of like eating an apple, like this banana, and I'm like, oh my god, this feels like I'm cheating. Like it feels like a cheat meal while it's just still whole foods. And I was so proud of myself where I feel like, okay, these are the days I had on a row and I feel my brain being rewired. And then we went to restaurants and we're in Spain right now. So I feel you, Miguel, would say, and when you are apart, like not like in this holiday mood, I feel like my entire progress, I'm just blaming it on the fact of being here and having sunshine and like not taking full credit of it because I don't know how I'm gonna work when I'm like full time in the office and stress, etc. But then we were in the restaurant and there was this amazing food with Parmesan cheese and olive oil on it, and I was starving and I'm like, I already made the mistake. I should have eaten something before going out, and now it's there. And instead of eating a little piece of bread, I went for the entire like this shot piece, and I was like, I knew I'm gonna feel horrible afterwards, and I knew it. But I'm like, how do I deal in that moment? Because I was telling my husband, take that away from me. And for him, he's like, he wouldn't dare. Like he's like, no, you're fine. You did enough progress. You know, they don't know how to support you in that sense because, of course, like it's like if you are hungry, then eat. Like you don't need to be this way. But then I felt so horrible afterwards, and now I'm like, how do I deal? This was exactly what I wrote. Like when I connected with my higher self, I just balance came to me, but I really struggle with it because I'm like, how do I eat well or like be graceful to myself when I don't and like go back at it, or like how do I feel like it's my holidays and I'm doing this challenge and I'm still resting and not burning myself out, or like
What did your high self say that you should have done? Or like, what would she have done?
well, I just keep checking in with myself to make sure I have the right intention. Because I feel like when I say I want to do this challenge because I want to take care of myself, it feels better than when I'm saying I want to get better and or like I want to feel in control of my body because I know this is not the right pattern for me. Like I've been hustling for the entire year and this is my first vacation. So I don't want to be obsessing about another goal. Like for me, it's more if it's whole foods or like if I'm eating entire whole food, then I have another goal of like, oh my god, now I'm eating too much of it. Like I'm eating too much of whole food, or my dream was a month ago to just eat whole food. That was already the goal. So I don't know how to
So
feel
I
good
see
about
this
it.
as a beautiful gift. Every time we mess up, let's call it that. Of course, it's not a mess up, but that's how you view it right now, right? I see it as such a beautiful lesson to learn. And you said you didn't feel good, and we don't want that, right? So you've tried something where it doesn't make you feel good. So a couple of options that you could do and learn from this experience is ask yourself, okay, next time I'm going to first of all try to make sure to eat a little bit more throughout the day so I don't get into starvation mode. That could be an option. The second option could be when I order this delicious piece of bread and olive oil and cheese and all of that I want to be able to enjoy because I want to find balance in my life, I will on the side also order some vegetables or a salad or meat, whatever, even like you could take half of it and then put the rest away. You could also have a conversation with your husband and say, okay, so I have this thing. I really want to find balance in my life. Next time, would you be willing, just like Lynn said, of like, can you help me? Would you next time I'm in this situation, when I ask you to put it away, I know it's so hard for you because you want the best for me, but the best for me in that situation is actually to support me in doing the thing that I really want. Would you be willing to do that? And if he said yes beforehand, the next time you guys are in that situation, he'll be able to remember, or at least you can remind him, hey, remember what we spoke about? And then he's going to be like, oh yes, I want to help her.
I feel like I learned like everything. I'm glad because everything you mentioned, the next time we went to restaurants, I did implement it. But it's funny how like in my brain, I only memorized the time where I messed up in that sense, where I'm like, it's not such a big of a deal. It's just funny, like to go deep. Like this is taking me way deeper than I thought I'll go, because like this goes way too deep. Where I'm like, oh my god, you're enough, you exist, you're worthy, you're like, this is all good. While like Emily said, the journaling, like you set yourself, like, or you remember that affirmation that you put, where I'm like, now I just say I'm reliable, because I feel like I made the promise on myself, and I feel like I always, if I make a promise like to anyone, I would never break it. Like that's what I'm known for. When I ask my friends what is my strength, they're like, you're so reliable. I'm like, why aren't I that way with myself? So now my affirmation is like, I'm reliable. I said we're gonna do this, so let's just.
I was gonna piggyback a little bit off of Emma's comment. Like, obviously, Pernille knows I've been in these challenges since March, so it's taken me a long time to get here. But from like March up until now, like when I have a really hard decision, whether it's like a food decision or like fitness or something that's like for my better, like my like future self, like I love to ask myself, like, does this fit with my goal? Like, especially during like periods when I really want like sugar and stuff, and like I'm at the grocery store and I'm like, all I want is like just chocolate or ice cream. I'm like, but does this align with my goals? And if I know like I haven't eaten enough that day and it's like I went to the store hungry and it's worse, it's like, okay, go get some veggies, like go get an apple, something like that. And I have had it like what Emily said, like I've had it where like I almost couldn't finish apples at one point because they were so sweet. And it was like I had to start buying like the mini lunchbox apples because I couldn't finish like a whole big apple because they were just so sweet. So I just think it's really interesting. And like what you were saying, like with Emma, it's interesting how like we get so hyper focused on like what we're like putting in our bodies after a while, because we're like, we know these things aren't going to make us feel good. Even I admit, like I am the epitome of a crazy dog mom. Like I have 2 dogs I'm obsessed with. Like I freak out more about what they put in their bodies than I do. And I'm like, why don't I do that for myself? Like I'm psychotic about like what's in their food. I'm like, why don't I do it for me? And there are a lot of studies like with like restaurants and stuff, like they purposely put bread on your table because it and makes you end up craving more carbs. So you end up eating more. So like there is like a whole science to it. So now like if we go to a restaurant and there's bread on the table, like if like Mike and I are splitting it, either I'll give him my portion because he doesn't care, or I'll like put mine to the side to eat like later. Because if like you eat in a certain order and you have like veggies first and protein first and then carbs, like you don't crave it as much, or like you don't have like those like super big cravings as much. So there is like a really odd science to restaurants of like how they make you like order more or order things that aren't as good for you. And like I've gotten very in tune to that, of knowing like if we order something as an appetizer that's really starchy and really carb heavy, it's like I'm gonna end up like feeling like crap, but I'm also gonna end up like craving worse foods.
Sometimes the real challenge and the real strength is not doing squats at the gym, is saying no to bread that you have in front of you.
Yes.
I will do 100
Yes.
squats, I will do 100 deadlifts, that's easy.
Mhm.
But then you put some nachos and queso and chips in front of me, and I'm like, oh, that's very hard.
Chips and salsa would be so hard to say no to if I was really hungry. But like, I'll happily go do like a ton of stuff in the gym, but it's so hard to say no to chips and salsa.
There's always going to be temptations. Like it's so I love it when you can just control what goes in your house. Like I don't buy these foods, so it's very easy to not eat them when you're at home because they're not there. But the truth of the matter is that maybe your partner brings home something that you don't want to eat, or like all the time with friends and family and just out and about and at work and everywhere. There's always food temptations all the time. And so I think it's more like the internal dialogue that's like the game changer. And so like hearing what you said, say his like, is this really in alignment with my goals? Or like what I say to myself is like these foods are addictive. So the more days in a row that I go without them, the less power they hold over me. And so I just think I'm like, it's hard right now, but it'll be a little bit less hard tomorrow and even a little bit less harder the next day until like it's not hard at all because it's true. Like once you get to that point and you view them as addictive foods, you just don't even want them anymore. So yeah, I think like yeah, reading that book and just like filling your brain with all of the dialogue that you want to use to like avoid falling into that pitfall, I think is like the crux of the problem.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode today. I hope you found some of these tips useful and helpful or inspiring. They definitely inspired me. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't yet subscribed or followed wherever it is that you're listening or watching, please do that so that we can have many more conversations in the new year. I have high hopes and dreams. A lot of my goals for this new year has to do with my podcast, which, by the way, we're about to get into the New Year's podcast conversations, hyping ourselves up, getting deep into reflecting on our past year and moving into really creating a vision of that dream life that we want to create moving forward, which, by the way, I just completed my 30-day journaling challenge that's going to be included in the January Transformation Challenge. And it is a journaling. It's probably the most powerful journaling challenge I've ever created, where every single day you're going to be connecting with that future version of yourself that you want to create and stepping into it, starting to live in that now so that you attract it, so that you experience, that you feel those emotions that you want to feel in the future once you've accomplished all of these dreams and goals that you want to accomplish, but actually bringing that into your here and now every single morning in this journaling routine. So that's just another fun part of these challenges that I do, that there's always journaling included so that we can shift our identity and our mindset into believing that we are these humans that we want to grow into becoming, on top of the workouts and the nutrition and the daily chat and all of that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you have a beautiful holiday season. And as always, remember that in order for you to grow, you have to challenge your norm. Bye.